That's the great trick of writing a good bad guy. No good villain sets out thinking, I'm going to do this awful thing. They have their reasons, and their reasons are important to them, and they're going to risk life and limb for these reasons. They're brave, they're smart, they're committed, they're all these great attributes. He's just playing for the wrong team. And if you can't be James Bond, be Dr. No. Hi, this is William Sadler. I played Sloan from Section 31 on Deep Space Nine, and this is Trek Untold.
Welcome to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I am your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. Star Trek is filled with memorable villains whose time is frequently short in the franchise, but their impact is massive. There's the Borg Queen, Khan Noonien Singh, Gul Dukat, and many others who left an indelible mark in the minds of Star Trek fans. Today's guest spent only 3 episodes in the franchise, but his role was so pivotal that fans are still shocked to find out just how brief his time on screen was. William Sadler played Luther Sloan for 3 episodes of Star Trek DS9, starting in Season 6 and ending in 7. Sloan introduced Trek fans to Section 31, a clandestine operation that kept the Federation afloat by working in the gray areas of the law. They were about results, and Sloan was just the beginning of this powerful and mysterious faction in Star Trek history. Sadler has made a career of playing big bad guys, but he's also played out of type across his wonderful career. You might recognize him as Heywood from the Shawshank Redemption, Colonel Stuart from Die Hard 2, and the Grim Reaper from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. He's also been in Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight, part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Iron Man 3 and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The Blacklist, Power, Homeland, Roswell, Hard to Kill, and plenty more. This veteran of screen and television also spent many years honing his craft in the theater world, performing side by side, night in and night out with some true luminaries of the stage, and we're going to spend some time chatting about some of those stories today too. So go ahead and sit back in your armchair. It's time for us to get to know the man behind Section 31, aka Mr. William Sadler. But before we start our chat with this week's guest, I want to remind you to please follow Trek Untold on social media, including Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. You can find this show on all of those platforms simply by searching for Trek Untold. Make sure you subscribe to this show, whether that's on the audio platform of your choosing or on YouTube, where the video version of this show lives. And speaking of, make sure to check out our YouTube channel more frequently for episodes of our new mini show, Tales from Trek Untold, as well as other sci-fi goodies. And of course, don't forget to leave ratings, reviews, comments, and whatever you can do no matter what platform you're on to enjoy this podcast and show others that you're digging it too. If you want to support this show financially, please consider becoming a Patreon member at patreon.com/TrekUntold. Shout out to Trek Long Island, who is having their 2nd annual convention this summer at Hop Hog, Long Island, New York, from May 31st to June 2nd. Headlined by Melissa Navia from Strange New Worlds, Armin Shimmerman, Chase Masterson, and J.G. Hertzler from DS9, Ethan Phillips from Star Trek Voyager, and Gabrielle Ruiz from Lower Decks. Among many other modern and classic Trek shows, this 3-day event will feature autographs, panels, including some with yours truly, and other ways for you to hang out with the stars and meet your fellow fans. You can learn more about this event or buy tickets for it at treklongisland.com. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and beam in this week's guest. Computer, access interview file. Whenever I see today's guest on a film or TV show, I know that I'm in for something special. Whether he's been a part of Section 31, a paramilitary task force, or the Grim Reaper, it's always an unforgettable performance. And I am elated today to introduce my guest and say, William Sadler, welcome to Trek Untold.
Thank you, Matthew. It's good to be here.
I have to tell you, a lot of times I tell my guests, I have this list that I wrote when I first started the podcast years ago. And there's like a bunch of names on that list. And William Sadler is one of the names on the very top of that list. So we're scratching that one off today. This list is getting shorter every year. I love it.
Oh, good. I'm happy to scratch another name off your list.
And there is so much I want to talk to you about today. So let's just dive on into things. And, before we get started, I do want to ask you the first question I like to ask all my guests. And that's, William, what's your earliest memory of Star Trek? I mean, were you a fan of the series back in the day when it was first airing, or have you ever been a fan of the show?
I was a fan of the show, the original Star Trek, with William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy. I thought it was the coolest thing since, I mean, in spite of the fact that the special effects were just as clunky as can be. Back then, that was state of the art. And if you're a kid watching it, those phasers looked real. And when Bones waved his magic twinkly thing over somebody who was injured, it was great. I mean, yeah, I was a fan of the original for sure. I didn't really pay a lot of attention, even though I worked with lots of the people involved in the subsequent series, and in fact worked on Deep Space Nine. None of them held that sort of romantic attachment that I had to William Shatner and the crew of the Enterprise.
Very understandable. Now, I'd like to get a little bit of the secret origin story of William Sadler today. I'd love to hear a little bit about where you grew up, who your parents were, and what they did, and what little William Sadler wanted to be when he grew up.
Let me see if I can find him. I'll ask.
He's in the cupboard somewhere. I think I saw him.
I grew up on a farm outside of Buffalo, New York, which is right in the snow belt, right in the lake effect snow belt. So we would get, 90 inches of snow was not a problem. And I grew up on a farm. My dad worked at a dairy. He wasn't a milkman, but he was sort of in charge of a lot of milkmen back when milk was delivered by milk trucks in little crates. And you would leave a note for the milkman saying, "I need butter this week," or whatever. And my mom was a mom. She was a housewife at the time on the farm. I grew up with my older brother, my younger sister, and my younger brother, Tommy. So it was Gary, Billy, Cindy, Tommy. And quickly, the cool thing about growing up on the farm like I did was that we spent all of our time running around the barn. We didn't have cows or horses or animals like that we had to take care of. We had pigeons and we had rabbits, but we didn't have, big animals to take care of. So it was just this giant playground, was this enormous barn. And we would put on shows for the neighbor kids. I remember hooking my sister up to I would invent, I took like a colander and put wires on it and put it on my sister's head. And it was the brainwashing machine. And we just was like act out anything that we saw in the movies or anything we saw on TV. We would just act it out in the barn. So me and my friend John Messer from down the road, we would act out. A lot of times it was Combat was the show at the time with Vic Morrow, and we would run around the barn with our BB guns, dive out of the hayloft, and come up shooting, and be captured by the Germans and be rescued, and it just these imaginary scenarios went on for hours and hours, until we got, someone would get wounded by the Germans, and you'd have to give them a bologna sandwich to heal them. And this was like crazy, wonderful, imaginary world that that we were able to create because we had a lot of time on our hands, and there weren't computer games, and there weren't. I mean, we watched some TV, but it was, there were 3 channels. They signed off at midnight or something. They played the Star Spangled Banner and went off the air. So I feel like a visitor from another time zone. Well, the one thing I have this great memory of me and John Messer, and this has to do with Star Trek. Actually, he had a chicken coop, this small chicken coop that didn't have chickens in it anymore. So we took it over, and that was our spaceship. And we took mayonnaise jar lids and we painted numbers on them and nailed them all over the wall of this chicken coop. And we would sit on the dirt floor and look out the window of the chicken coop, and we would use these mayonnaise lids as dials to dial up warp speed. And and we flew the chicken coop all over the universe. And then we would pick up our BB guns. We'd land on strange planets. And the planets never had gravity. So so the 2 of us, like 10 years old, something like that, would pick up our BB guns and go floating out into the field behind the chicken coop, like there was no gravity, But anyway, that was sort of the childhood. There were just hours and hours. I realized some years later that I had sort of been rehearsing for these action movies that I did. I mean, that dive out of the hayloft and come up shooting. I think I did that on Die Hard 2. It was. I think I was rehearsing for this career that I ended up having.
So when you weren't running around shooting imaginary Germans and flying in the USS Henhouse, when did you realize that acting could be your profession? When did you know that acting was going to be it for you?
I didn't. I was going to be a stand-up comedian. I told Joe, I was around Buffalo. I was Banjo Bill Sadler. I'd learned to play the banjo, and I told jokes. I thought that was going to be it. Until I had an English teacher named Dan Larkin, who my senior year in high school, I had already been in the variety show like a couple of times and won, the Grange Hall in town gave me a $25 stipend and it was like I was winning awards with my stand-up. And Dan Larkin said, "Why don't you try out for this play? We're doing Harvey this year." And I auditioned for it, and I got the role of Elwood P. Dowd, the guy who sees an imaginary rabbit, and had a great time. And then I followed that up at his suggestion. I followed that up with a Pulitzer Prize winning play called The Subject Was Roses. Anyway, the director of that play, and by that time I was sort of completely hooked. I mean, acting this was going to be I don't know that I thought it was going to be a career, but it was a way to, I was already good at it, or good at parts of it. And it was a way to understand humans in a way that I had never heard explained by my parents or anybody. There wasn't great communication with my parents.
Did you find that it was like the act of playing the characters, or just being around people playing characters that was kind of like informing you?
It was it was kind of both, but it was the creating characters. In The Subject Was Roses, he's a young man whose father is this abusive drunk, And you start with the words on the page, and you work backwards, and you have to figure out how would you have to feel to say that, and then why would you feel that way, and so on. And so you keep peeling the onion back, and the more I peeled, the more excited I became, because it was I was learning so much, and it was finally something. It wasn't that I was interested in the glory or the applause or whatever, or reviews. What excited me was that I was finally someone was explaining humans to me in a way that I had never understood them. And my whole career, that's been the part of it that I've found the most exciting or the most interesting. Yeah, I guess that's how I got started. Then I was hooked. Robert Schultz, that was his name. I'm sorry, that director. Mm. And he asked me, now I'm 18 years old and still in high school, and the Vietnam War is raging. And he said, what are you planning to do when you graduate? And I said, I'm going to go to Upstate and be an industrial arts teacher, because I didn't know. I had no idea what I was going to do. And he said, let me make a phone call for you. And he called the head of the drama department at Geneseo, State University College at Geneseo, Alice Austin. And he said, I met this kid, and I think you should meet him. I think he'd be a great fit for your program. And he drove me to Geneseo, and we had dinner with Alice Austin and saw a play. And by that time, the hook was in, and that's all I wanted to do was plays.
I do know that you began your higher education at Geneseo, but you then went to do your master's. You earned your master's, in fact, at Cornell, very, very prestigious Ivy League school. I'd love to hear a little bit about your education there, and in particular, just if there was one lesson that you picked up at your time at Cornell that kind of changed your perspective on what you were doing.
The time I spent at Cornell was it was very it wasn't as much fun as Geneseo had been.
I imagine it's a lot more competitive in some ways.
I was just go for it. One play after another, and it's Shakespeare, and it's Chekhov, and it's this, and I'm like soaking it up like a sponge. And then I auditioned, and I got a scholarship to go to Cornell and study acting for 2 years in this MFA program. There was all of a sudden I was being criticized by the other students, by the teachers, and it started to feel like nothing I did was good enough. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm obviously no good at it. And I used to go fishing at night, and just I would get so depressed and anxious during the day that I had to go get Zen at night. And the thing that I learned a lot of techniques about acting and how to take apart a scene and examine a scene. But one of the things that I learned that was maybe the most important is that you don't have to beat yourself up, that the best work kind of comes out of a joy for what you're doing. And as soon I was cast as Hamlet after Cornell, and the first rehearsal, all of us, I did the first few scenes and the rehearsal, and no one was criticizing. It was like, and I'm getting paid $500 for the whole summer. And it was just fantastic. It was sort of like I just exploded. It was fun again.
Mm.
And now it was fun, but I had some technique, you know, I had some scars, and I had learned, I think the big lessons that I've learned about acting, I learned in the theater in New York. Acting schools are great as far as they go, but there's something about doing it, you know, actually being in the arena and trying every night to hit it again or find it. Find it within yourself so that it sings and it's there for the audience and it's there for you. And how do you do that? And it wasn't really until I got to New York and I was doing play after play, a lot of off Broadway, and then some off, and then on Broadway. And when you're doing I think I was in Biloxi Blues for about a year and a half. And the process of just showing up, get the instrument, get ready, and hitting it night after night, matinee, 8 times a week, carrying your part of this play taught me more than Geneseo or Cornell ever could. Anyway, yeah, that was sort of the beginnings.
I'm glad you brought up Hamlet a little while ago, because that actually is the perfect way to kind of start talking about this other show that you did on Broadway. And I'd like to talk to you about playing Julius Caesar in the Broadway production you did in 2005 alongside Denzel Washington as Brutus. You're talking about Hamlet before, but now we're doing Shakespeare on Broadway, which has got to be a thrill. And you're doing it with Denzel, directed by Daniel Sullivan as well. I'd love to hear any stories you have from your time on that show. What's it like to be murdered on stage every night?
It was awesome. It was truly awesome. It was, I found myself, I love doing Shakespeare. And I found over time doing play after play after play of, his work, that I sort of found my own voice in it. And one of the hardest things, aside from doing a live Shakespeare on Broadway 8 times a week to this huge house of people, and making it happen new every single night, like this. I've never said these words. I've never felt this before. I'm bringing you along with me.
It's got to be spontaneous.
Right. It's got to be spontaneous, but it's the 58,000th time you've done it, and that's the great trick always. But I did this nude scene in it. Daniel Sullivan asked me if Caesar could show up nude. He's getting a massage the morning that he died, the morning that he's going to be killed. And Calpurnia comes in and they have an argument. She doesn't want him to go to the Senate. And he says, come on, I'm going. I don't care what you say. I'm, and one of the hardest things to overcome was this being naked on stage and figuring out how to where to put the towel when you sit up on the massage table, so you can do the scene and people aren't looking up the towel, the first 8 rows, and it was this funny. It's a funny problem to have, because Caesar doesn't care who sees him. I mean, this is his wife. These are his servants. It doesn't matter. To him, he's completely impervious to, I'll walk around naked if I want to. He's Caesar. But the actor was self-conscious, and so was Tamara Tooney, self-conscious, and it was like this thing we had to make it go away, and just it's incidental to the scene. It isn't the point of the scene. It isn't, and I always thought it was a hard thing to do, but I think it was useful for the audience to see, and I'm sure that's why Daniel wanted it there, was to see Caesar when they stab him, when they kill him in about 5 minutes from now. They're not stabbing a suit. This vulnerable, simple white body. Mm. That's where all that blood is going to come from. That's where all the wounds are going to be.
It's kind of showing the frailty of this man who's a ruler of everything, but at the end of the day, he's still just flesh and blood.
Right. And I sort of leaned into the frailty of Caesar as well. I gave him like a tremor, like a palsy that he kept having to hide, and that Calpurnia would hide for him, would keep other people from seeing, and so on. So that was part of the playing of the character. But I loved doing it. I mean, the words are so powerful. You don't really have to do much, except let yourself be, let those words kick up whatever emotions in you they do. And it becomes fresh. You don't have to cook anything up, I guess is what I'm saying. You don't have to. That's one of the things we did at Cornell, was that we would try to cook up emotions and then do the scene. And and I found it frustrating and painful and not very productive either. But if you give yourself over to those words, more and more, I could find that I could ride on them. They would carry me. And in fact, it was in the production of Hamlet that I did in 1973. There was one night, one performance, when the scene with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern after the play within the play, right? The king has gone crazy, and he's run upstairs, and he's a light. It worked. The play worked, and Hamlet was right to do this. And then Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come and approach him, and he says, I forget the words now, but it's something like, do you think I'm a pipe? You would play on me? You seem to know my stops. You seem to know exactly how to play me. You shits. And
Shakespeare is often known for using little shits in his scripts.
But the words got the emotions that the words led us to began to throw me. The scene lifted off the page, and it went like 100 miles an hour. It went by in an instant, and I was thrown into the scene with Gertrude, with his mother. And the same thing happened. And I realized that I couldn't reproduce it exactly, not right away. But I realized that night that that's what you go for. That's what you need to let yourself be taken by these words. they have weight. They can hurt you. They can, they can bring up what you need, all the energy you need to play out the rest of the play. And that performance was over. I mean, it went by in a heartbeat, and everybody in the cast was like, "Oh shit, that's what it should look like." And of course, we spent the rest of the summer trying to reproduce that. But you asked, like, what have I learned about acting along the way? That was one of the moments I can point to and say, that was a lesson. And it took me a while to learn it. I do this thing now where I learn the lines and I learn the cues, and I know what's going to happen in the scene, and so does everybody else. But I've sort of taught myself to forget. Now forget all that, and let their words bring your words out. Let the scene bring out what needs to come out of you, rather than the other way around. You trying to cook something up.
Kind of like you're the vessel for the text.
But it requires that you not know what's coming. And of course you know what's coming, but you have to learn to do this little head trick where you trust that it'll all show up. It'll all be there when you need it. I guess I'm not sure I made that very clear.
I think we get it. No, I think that was actually pretty easy to understand as far as like this character. It's Shakespeare is a complicated kind of world, and it's interesting to kind of hear how people tackle these characters, because there is a precedent of here's a play that's from 500 years ago, but you do need to make it fresh somehow, and you need to make the audience understand what's happening and relate or empathize or whatever the emotion is you need them to feel, and that's got to be a challenge to just do that character like that has so much history behind them.
Well, and the fact that the reason that we keep doing Shakespeare, and actors talk about how much fun it is to do Shakespeare, is because when he was such a good observer of the human condition, when he wrote Romeo and Juliet, when he wrote what the lovers say to each other, or it just rings true. There's a human truth in everything Hamlet does, in everything Horatio does, in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Everything that his characters say and do has this has a kind of a human truth. It makes emotional sense, and you can take it in lots of different directions. It's not just one thing. But I did Romeo and Juliet with Amanda Plummer as Juliet, and John Vickery as Romeo, and I love John Vickery. Amanda Plummer she went at this thing with she'd never done Shakespeare before, and she just threw herself into it, and it was magnificent. She was brilliant. She was, she was petulant and angry and snotty. This teenage girl who wants what she wants, and get out of my way. Why are you telling me I can't do this? And getting in the, and the nurse is trying to control her, and Friar Lawrence is trying to control her. And she was brilliant. I thought it was a brilliant thing. She let those words take her to places that I'm sure Shakespeare intended the actors to go. It wasn't reciting. It wasn't John Gielgud's. There's nothing. And it was like there's nothing wrong with that. And he got where he needed to get to. But when Amanda Plummer just tore the ass off of scenes, you you said, "Oh, crap, that's of course that's Juliet. That's a young girl in love, and she's going to get what she's going to get. She'll do the reckless things that Juliet does.
One of the great things about your very prolific career is that there's so much diversity in the roles, and we're going to now go from talking about being an emperor to being a prisoner, because I want to spend a little time talking about Shawshank Redemption. And your role as Heywood, because, one of the things I really love about Shawshank is not just the script is perfect and the acting is amazing, but it's also that every character really had so much to work with. And even Heywood, and even I could even say the warden or anybody else there, for the most part, they were all pretty three-dimensional. And even Heywood was a kind of complex character. So I'd love to hear, any of your favorite memories from that set, and more just what you thought about Heywood and doing that kind of a role.
I guess Heywood does some pretty cruel things. I mean, he plays that game in the beginning where he makes the bet that gets fat ass killed. I wanted to give him another color besides being a hardened criminal, to hell with everybody else. And what do you care for fresh fish?
Yeah.
He's dead. You could go that way. You could make him that, but I didn't find that all very interesting. So I kept looking for places where, for example, when he wins the bet, when fat ass starts yelling, "I've won the bet. I didn't mean for him to get killed." And he doesn't know that Hadley's going to beat it. Hadley's going to come down here and beat him to death. And I started trying to shut him up. And that's not in the script. That was something that I wanted to, come on, shut up. I won the cigarettes. I won the bet already. I also added a slight stutter, which I found Frank actually asked me to not do it, but I kept doing Frank Darabont, the director. And usually if director really doesn't want it, and I guess maybe I toned it down for him, but I put it there because it softens the man. And then come to find out from guards we actually shot it at a prison. Some of the people that used to work there, the guards said that after enough years, inmates will often develop a stutter, which I didn't know when I did it. I guess those two things, and drinking the beer.
That beer scene is magical.
The beer scene on the roof and offering Andy the beer. And then when he doesn't want it, I did this little walking away. I was like, back to the guys. I don't know what's up with him. But we're all having this, it's magic. It's, you're right. Yeah. They were it was fun to find all of these little, moments, little things. Also, watching James Whitmore work, and Morgan Freeman was just that was an acting class. That was a master class, to be able to sit in scenes, look across the table. What I found was that those dining room table scenes where we're all around the table with everybody.
Yeah, in the cafeteria.
Everybody brought their game. Everybody, it wasn't like there was a movie star and then there were, everybody else is just doing their supporting roles. It was like everybody brought their A game to all of those scenes.
There's something kind of theatrical, I feel like, about the film, and in particular those scenes too. But there's something more theatrical and less filmic, I think, in a lot of ways. about Shawshank.
I'm not surprised. They deliberately chose actors who had strong theater backgrounds because Frank wanted an ensemble. He didn't want this to be a movie star driven story, even though there are main characters. He wanted that ensemble, and so they went out of their way to find actors with strong theater backgrounds, and that's what they got. We shot it in sequence, which you never do, and they did that because it spans 19 years, and they realized that going back and forth with the makeups and the hair and the clothes, aging everybody 19 years and then going back and being young again. And so it was going to be easier for everybody if we just shoot this in sequence, which never happens. And the other thing we did that never, ever happens is we rehearsed. We got to the set a couple weeks before we started filming. And they taped off in this big rehearsal room. They taped off where the walls are and where the doors are and what have you. And we rehearsed because he wanted the ensemble to look like they'd been together. They'd lived together for ages and ages, and not, they weren't thrown together the first day. He wanted all of that little byplay and slap assing and ass slapping and, the fooling around that the guys all did. He wanted that established before we started filming.
One of the things that I noticed in the film, rewatching it for this interview, was something I'm kind of curious to find out if there's any tension behind it. But I noticed that the character of Heywood is really kind of centered around a lot of death. Like we mentioned with Fat Ass, like he's essentially responsible for Fat Ass's death indirectly, but he is. And then later Brooks, is holding a knife to his throat, threatening to kill him. And right. I was kind of wondering, like, I don't know if you noticed any of that when you were like performing the character, but it feels like for whatever reason, there's kind of this specter of death almost looming over Heywood at all times, more so than the other characters.
Again, you play these things one note at a time. And it's like a piece of music. You can't play the end of the movie at the beginning of the movie. I guess I didn't really think. I also bring Andy the rope, and everybody says, "Well, what? He's gonna, They all think
might just not be a crazy fan theory after all."
I don't. Well, but everybody thinks I brought him the rope and he's going to hang himself. I hadn't really thought of it that way. That's an interesting observation. I didn't see that, I don't think, when I was playing it. I know when I deliberately didn't want to play that he's happy that Fat Ass gets killed or he's indifferent to Fat Ass's death. The reason that he turns and bites Andy's head off when Andy says what was his name is that comes out of a kind of guilt. It's none of your fucking business. He's being defensive because he knows, we didn't mean to get him killed. That was what I was playing there, as opposed to in like Die Hard 2, where he can kill a whole plane load of people and doesn't, he's missing that empathetic note completely. He could care less. He uses them to get what he wants. That's it.
And let's talk Die Hard 2, actually. Let's talk about Colonel Stuart here. And I'd heard that there was an audition story, and I'm wondering if it's true. I read that there's a story regarding like how you got the role.
Dude, I was shooting a movie with Dennis Hopper called The Hot Spot. And my agent called me about while I was filming that, or maybe we were just wrapping it up. And I think Dennis may have had something to do with my getting that role. No, they called me in, and I read with Bruce Willis. There was the director, Rennie Harlan, and and Joel Silver, the producer, and Bruce Willis. And my reputation I think it was the third movie I had done. So I was still a very new face in Los Angeles. And everything I had done, I did Project X where I killed all the 8 chimps and things. And then I did I did Hard to Kill. I killed Steven Seagal's family and so. And I was an asshole in Dennis Hopper's movie, The Hot Spot. So by the time we got to Die Hard 2, I had established myself as someone who could, kill you and sit on your chest and eat a sandwich. And that's, and I think that's what they wanted. It was intimidating because I was new in town and I hadn't done, like I said, it was like a third, fourth time doing a movie. And there's a learning curve to working on camera, So it took me a while I was talking about running around the barn and playing with my friend John Messer. There's a scene in Die Hard 2. I've told this story before, so people will excuse me if they've heard it. But where we're all around the nose cone of this plane, and we open fire with these automatic weapons and throw grenades, but they're real automatic weapons. They're real weapons. They're real guns. We're firing blanks, right? And they're full loads, and the racket is incredible because there's like 4 or 5 of us all firing at once, and it's just raining brass shell casings everywhere. We finished we did the first take, and Tim Cooney, the sound guy, came up to me and said, "Bill, you don't have to make that sound with your mouth anymore." Because apparently I was still 10 years old playing in my barn.
Running around shooting Germans.
Yeah. That, and there was another nude scene in that was...
I was going to ask about that because we go from one nude scene to another in this interview. But yeah, I think that one's pretty iconic as far as Die Hard 2 goes.
It was terrifying. And it was... it was supposed to be a closed set. They're always supposed to be closed sets. But I got there. I usually got to the costume fitting, and we've tried on all the costumes, and with Rennie Harlan, and got to the end of it, and I said, what's he wearing in the hotel room scene where he's doing Tai Chi? And Rennie Harlan looked at the costumer, and the costumer looked at Rennie, and there was this awkward silence, and then Rennie said, "Well, Bill, I was thinking you would be nude." And that was the first that I heard of it. And if I'd had my senses, I would have said, "Well, I need you to call my agent. We're gonna renegotiate this thing now." But I didn't. I said, "Well, push that scene off to the end of the movie and get me a trainer. Get me in a gym and get me a trainer." And that's what they did. They hired Keith Kuba to work with me, and I tried to beef up for those scenes. And it was supposed to be a closed set, but there was a line of chairs facing the set, and Joel Silver sat right in the middle. On all of a sudden, they were like, every producer was there. Every people were bringing pizzas in.
It was an event.
Secretaries were showing up with faxes. Yeah. But like once you drop the robe and you do it once, it's like, yeah. Okay, now you've all seen it. Let's go. How many more takes? What else do you need? Let's go.
Hey everybody, we'll get right back to the interview in 1 second, but I wanted to remind you all to check out Trek Untold over at Patreon. Patreon is the best way to directly support creators of things you like through a monthly subscription of an amount that you can choose. Trek Untold has a few different tiers already with different benefits, ranging from early access to episodes, the ability to ask a future guest questions, exclusive merchandise, and other bonuses that I'd love to offer, but first I need to grow that Patreon community to do that. Trek Untold has been around since mid-2020 and has grown a ton since then, thanks to listeners and viewers like you. Through a platform like Patreon, you can help me keep improving the quality of each episode and keep bringing you new interviews with folks that make the Star Trek universe what it is. If this community can grow more over on Patreon, I can offer new perks like watch parties, exclusive Trek Untold episodes, being able to directly interact with guests, and other things, but in order to do that, I need to know my audience wants these things. The best way to tell me what you want is by supporting us on Patreon, so please, check us out at patreon.com/TrekUntold today and become a bigger part of the Trek Untold family. And now, back to the interview. I was watching one of your videos on your YouTube channel, and you were talking about some of your different characters, and you talked about this sort of intelligence meter that you have when you're approaching them. And like you mentioned with Heywood, you kind of turned it down. I think with Sloan, you had it turned very high up. I'm curious about what you did when you were on Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey as Death. Like, where does he fit exactly? Because he's just like doing one thing. He's playing it real straight in a world that is very much not around him. How did you do Death?
I think I may have turned it down for him as well. He's never had to play Clue or Twister or, none of those things. He's not terribly bright. It was more fun to play him that way. And I turned his IQ meter down somewhere around where Heywood's is. It's funny. Characters are funny or funnier when, as you turn that meter down, as they get less and less bright, they sort of see less and less of the world. They until finally they only see what's right in front of them. Kind of like a dog. I guess I've been playing chess recently with my 7-year-old grandson, who's really good at it for some reason. But I've been watching YouTube videos of people that are really, really good at it. And they're thinking, it's sort of when you turn that dial up, it's like you can, the further up you turn it, the more moves ahead you can see. So when I'm playing people that are, Colonel Stuart is one of them. He can, he knows what's going on behind him. He knows what you're going to do before you know what you're going to do. That's really sort of the difference is, whereas Heywood doesn't know what you're going to do until you do it. And then he's surprised by what you did. And the Grim Reaper is the same way. He doesn't expect to lose at these games. He doesn't expect to be dressed like a woman. He doesn't expect them to Melvin him. He doesn't expect to become part of the band and love it. Even that takes him by surprise.
It's real fun just rewatching that again as an adult, because there's so many jokes I missed as a kid, and like now I can appreciate that. Oh, you're doing your best Seventh Seal impersonation while you're in this Bill and Ted world. It makes it even more hilarious.
I hadn't seen Seventh Seal. I knew of it, but yeah, that's exactly. That's a joke within the. What's funny is watching him lose to these two idiots.
You sunk my battleship.
Yeah, you ever sank my battleship? Yeah. He's. It was great fun to play. It was. It's on the highlight reel. I was like, I really do. I'll probably be remembered for, you might be a king or a little street sweeper, but sooner or later you dance with the reaper. That's going to be probably on my headstone when I'm all done. Again, when I got the script, there was no accent. In fact, I called the casting people and said, I'm thinking of doing an accent. I wanted to do this funny accent that I heard back at the public theater. There was an actor named Jan Triskin who was Czechoslovakian, and he used to talk like that. Everything was, he had this heavy Czechoslovakian accent that made everything he said funny. And I want to do that at the audition. And they said, "Oh, you probably shouldn't. You probably shouldn't do that." But I did it anyway, and it was good that I did because it made it funny. It just made him funny. You can read the phone book with that accent and emphasizing all the wrong syllables, and it was weird. They put me on tape, and then I didn't hear anything for a couple of weeks, and I finally got a call. I got a call from, I think they went out to like Vincent Price, and they were looking somebody to play the Reaper, this big scary person, Christopher Lloyd and Christopher Lee. I think they thought they were considering. And finally, the casting person called me at home and said, "Bill, I need you to come back in. They think you're too young to play this. So go to a Halloween store and get some gray and put it in your hair and black out your teeth or something because you're too cute. You're too young. You're too attractive and too young." So whatever. And I thought, well, that's going to look like, that's just going to look awful. So I called the makeup man, Scott Edo from Die Hard 2. And I told him my problem. And he said, "Come on over to my house. I happen to be in town. Got all my stuff here in the kitchen." So the morning of the audition, I went to his house at 7 a.m. and he did this age makeup on me. And I looked like 70 or something. It's like this. And I drove to Orion and I did the audition again. And it worked. I got the job. But there was a producer there apparently who said, he looks a lot older in person than and then they couldn't figure out the makeup. They were like, they didn't know what he should look like. And there were all of these different makeup designs that they were playing with that I didn't realize at the time because I'm just the lowly actor. But they came up with this like white ball cap, no eyebrows, so on. Mike Mills, the special effects makeup guy, we used to meet at like 3 hours before they started filming to put all the makeup on. And then another 45 minutes at the end of the day to take it off.
I was actually curious about that makeup. Like, I know they did your hands and your feet, but like, do they do more of your body in addition to that? Plus your head, of course.
No, because he always has the robe on. I mean, they did my feet when we're in heaven and walking over this glass panel that the camera was looking up underneath. Then they did my feet and my legs, I think, but they always did my hands. And there was this little squadron of people who spent the whole day getting the white makeup off the black robe because it was on my neck and my chin. And so, as soon as you turn your head, there's like this big white stripe on the black robe. So I forget there was some chemical that they used that They probably shortened my life by 10 years with this chemical, but it was worth it.
Well, William, let's beam into our Star Trek discussion at last here. We're talking about Section 31 agent Luther Sloan, and you appeared in 3 DS9 episodes, which were Inquisition, Inter Arma Enum Silent Legis, which is one of the longest names in Trek show history, and Extreme Measures. Now, I'm curious to know if you had ever auditioned for Star Trek before you got the part for Sloan.
No.
First time.
And I didn't audition for Sloan.
Really?
They called my agent and said, would he be interested in playing this role? And I read the script, and I was immediate. First of all, I was a Trek fan, so there was that. And I thought, oh, cool. I got a chance to be, Star Trek is sort of a part of the fabric of our culture, And the very first thing I read, I was hooked. The very first thing that Sloan does, I only saw the first episode, is he's sitting there. He's sitting there watching Dr. Bashar sleep. And I thought, that is the creepiest thing I've ever heard. It was great. I thought it was like you don't have to do anything else as a character. That audience already thinks you're the creepiest person alive, and then he wakes up and I think he was modeled after Oliver North, but he was somebody who was sure he was doing he was doing something illegal because it was good for the country, or so he thought, or so the powers that be thought. And I thought that was great. That was a fascinating idea, that there was this organization in the Federation that the Federation doesn't even know exists, that keeps stepping in and fixing things, step in and give that planet a pandemic. You didn't think you won that war by yourselves, did you? That sort of that kind of powerful evil. There are no rules. There's nothing he won't do for the Federation. And the Federation can stand there and say, well, we have rules. We can't do this and we can't do that. We abide by all of these rules because we're good people. and here was this organization that's I know you're good. You be good people, and I'll see what I can do about that war you're trying to win.
The interesting thing about Deep Space Nine is that really all the bad guys are not just mustache twirling bad guys. Every single one of them has so much depth, and they all believe that they're doing the right thing. And that's got to be a real juicy kind of role to bite into.
That's the great trick of writing a good bad guy. Colonel Stewart's the same way. He thinks, no villain, no good villain sets out thinking, I'm going to do this awful thing. They have their reasons, and their reasons are important to them, and they're going to risk life and limb for these reasons. They're brave, they're smart, they're committed, they're all these they're all these great attributes. He's just playing for the wrong team, and that was Colonel Stewart. That was good villains are always fun. And if you can't be James Bond, be Dr. No. Don't. They're fascinating. They're more fun. The hero has to abide by all sorts of rules. Villains don't have any rules.
And I want to give you a bit of Star Trek trivia here about these episodes of DS9. I'm not sure if you were ever aware of this, but Martin Sheen was actually originally considered for the role of Sloan. And according to, this is an actual quote from the Star Trek Deep Space Nine companion book. Let's get real nerdy here. And basically, this is a quote from Ira Stephen Bear, and kind of like why they went with you. They said was they needed someone, and I quote, who had real power as an actor and who could keep you from jumping to a final conclusion about his character. Have you ever heard that before?
Whoa, no.
That's all for you.
No. Wow, that's wonderful. I like that. Real power as an actor, and you're not sure. It could keep you guessing.
Yeah.
Is he? Wait a minute. Whose team is he on here? Yeah. No, I'd never heard that before. That's wonderful. I'm kind of amazed that there were only 3 episodes.
Same. Like I rewatched them for this interview, and I'm like, wait, there's only 3? Are you kidding? Like it feels like you left such a bigger mark on the franchise.
I know. It's sort of.
And I have to tell you, this is just kind of kismet, because I was looking on one of the many Star Trek Facebook groups I'm in, and somebody was just talking about Sloan, and they literally had just said what I said to you, which was like, I can't believe he only did 3 episodes.
I can't believe they wanted Martin Sheen. That's. I'm honored. That play that I mentioned in the beginning. The subject was roses. The Pulitzer Prize-winning play. Martin Sheen played the young man in that on Broadway, and it kind of launched him. I'm a huge Martin Sheen fan, so that's really nice to know. I wonder if he just wanted too much money or something.
Who knows? I think they found the right choice, though, regardless. And yeah, I do want to also compliment your performance here as the character, and that I really love the body language of Sloan. We mentioned that Sloan is, with Bashir sitting in the chair, and he's doing the classic Sloan slump, I like to call it. But, even then, he's just like, he has this real physical presence of one part dominance, but other part submission, because he has to pretend he's someone else. But really, we know that there's so much more to this character. It's a lot of complexity to him. So I'd love to hear what you thought about the physicality of who Sloan was. And I should also add on top of that, how much did the outfit you were wearing, because you had a few different outfits, but especially that black leather number, how much did that kind of influence what you did and how you physically approached him?
The wardrobe can have a tremendous effect on how he has a strong backbone. If you have all the power in the room, you don't have to lean forward. And I don't know that he slumps. But when he's in control of the whole world, the whole situation, he's not on guard. He can get what he wants without raising his voice, without intimidating someone with his physical presence. I'm not a very intimidating. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. I guess I intimidate people, but they shouldn't be. But yeah, and I love the costume. I mean, that black leather thing was, how could you not stand up straight? And
that's some real James Bond supervillain costume right there.
Yeah. You don't have to do much else. If you're dressed like that, you're already dangerous. And you can't slump. You can't. It's no. Your shoulders are back, and your back is straight, and you don't have to raise your voice. And like I said, if you have all the power, if you're holding all the cards and you have all the power, you tend to lean back in your chair.
Yeah, I just heard a story recently about Andrew Robinson, who was a character on the show called Garrick. And he basically came and did 1 episode, and turned out they loved him so much, he became a fixture throughout all 7 seasons. Now, for your part here, did you know that Sloan was going to be part of this 3-episode thing, or was it supposed to be like a one and done? That would have been it.
I didn't know. I didn't know when I started it. I thought maybe there would be more. I would have enjoyed coming back. Maybe he's just such a strong flavor, you don't need a lot of that's I don't know if that's the phrase to use, but it doesn't take much of it to shake up the whole universe.
Yeah.
which I guess he did. And proud to. Thank you.
I'd love to hear also if you had any memories of working with Siddig Alexander as Bashir. If you had any, 'cause he was basically your scene partner for really all three of your episodes, more or less exclusively your scene partner. What was it like working with Siddig?
Poor guy he had to put up with me for the. He was terrific. He was lovely to work with. They have a thing on the Star Trek shows where you have to be letter perfect. Every line. There's no improving. There's no hemming and hawing. They write these words down exactly the way they want them, and he also made. It's hard to step into a show. It's always hard to step to a show as a guest, the guest actor, the guest star, because everyone on the set, everyone in the room they all know each other. They've all eaten lunch together. They've been together for a year and a half or 2 years or 3 years. It always feels like you're stepping onto a bus that's barreling down the highway already, and you don't know anyone. No one, until later in the day when the camera guy comes over and says, "You don't remember, but I worked with you on the . Siddig, I will say they went out of the way to make me feel comfortable. Not quite like you're part of the family, because he's not. But you're an actor in our world now. Yeah, no, he was lovely to work with. I felt bad. I felt bad screwing with him so badly.
So I want to talk about your final appearance in Extreme Measures, and in particular because this one's really interesting because it's really like Sloan is getting a 20-minute long death scene. And that's kind of unheard of in Trek, and the way it's done as well. It's a pretty unique episode. It's a really fun one to watch again. I'm curious if you remember anything from your final appearance as Sloan.
No, I don't. I remember being I remember being unhappy that they were killing me off.
But what a way to go!
Yeah, they're chasing me in my own head. I thought was pretty terrific. But I was. At the same time, I was like, nuts. I would have been happy to do lots more episodes. But yeah, I don't remember a great deal about the final days of shooting that last episode.
Well, I mean, we know that Sloan is in theory no longer with us in that way, but this is Star Trek. Anything can happen. And we do know that there is a Section 31 miniseries in progress. I know you probably can't say if you were or not, but would William Sadler want to come back into the Star Trek universe one more time as Sloan or maybe someone else?
I would love to. I thought he was a really fun character to play. Somebody who is such a good chess player. Somebody who is so far ahead of the people that he's manipulating. No, I would love to do Sloan again. He has a place in my heart.
All right, so William, that's pretty much just a few bits and pieces of your very, very prolific career. But what are you working on these days? I know you've got a YouTube channel that had some music here and there. Like, what are you up to now?
Let me see if I have. Oh, I just happen to have one here. This is. And
that's the Kitchen Tapes.
It's the Kitchen Tapes. It's an album. I put out an album of songs that I wrote. I've been writing songs for ages and ages and ages. And I finally, during the pandemic, I got around to making recordings, decent recordings of them with good musicians playing. And you can go to therealwilliamsadler.com or williamsadler.bandcamp.com. And if you buy their CDs, their albums, it's a lot of fun. It's a really nice album. The proceeds go to St. Jude's hospital for children, the Cancer Research Hospital for children's cancer. So it's a good thing. So I don't get rich from it. There are 275 albums, 275 CDs, and they're numbered and signed, each and every one of them. So feel free while they are available.
We're going to have links to that in the show notes for this episode, so make sure you check them out. And we're also going to have links to William's YouTube channel, because there's a lot of fun songs in there. I was especially a fan of the Dildo song. And we'll leave that one for a different episode, I think. But I want to wrap things up here. Just one last question for you. And this was an easy one, I think. William, what's the best thing about being a part of the Star Trek universe?
The best thing about being part of the Star Trek universe is that the fans are so incredible that I did 3 episodes as Luther Sloan in Section 31, and it's had reverberations for decades now. I think the fans are what's astonishing about being. I've done lots and lots and lots of projects. I don't think I've ever done one that had such a devoted fan base, and it's amazing. So, thank you.
Well, thank you for being so fan friendly, and thank you for chatting with me today and my audience and telling us so many of your really awesome stories. I mean, I got to just tell you one last thing is I just love seeing anytime I see you on screen, because I know it's going to be this fully formed 3-dimensional kind of character. I know you're going to give it your all. And it's just been, really, I'm kind of without words. I'm babbling at this point, but for real, it's been awesome to talk to you, because I've been loving you for so many years. And I look forward to hopefully, if we find a way to get you back in Star Trek somehow, but if not, whatever you're working on next.
Well, it's been fun. So let me know if you want to do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, William. We'll give you the live long and prosper to you.
Thanks.
Close enough.
Take care. Bye.
That's it for this week's episode of Trek Untold. Thank you for checking it out. Don't forget to follow us on social media, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Trek Untold, and subscribe wherever you are listening to or watching on. And that includes the audio versions on whatever platforms that might be, and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@TrekUntold. If you'd like to support this show financially, please consider visiting patreon.com/TrekUntold to become a member of this show. And along with getting access to all sorts of wonderful perks, you'll also know that you're helping out this show continue to thrive, survive, and make new content all the time. I'm Matthew Kaplowitz. This has been Trek Untold. Thanks for watching. And until next time, always remember, fortune favors the bold.
Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars, is powered by the Rageworks Podcast Network and affiliated with Nerd News Today.